All right, now we are ready to go on to rule number 3. So we're going to start with rule 3A. So rule 3A says that we have a trinomial and the coefficient in front of the first term, is a 1, okay? So the number in front of the letter is always called the coefficient, and if there isn't one showing, it's an invisible 1, okay? So this is the only time when we start with a double bubble, okay? We always end up with what I call double bubbles at the end, but this is the only one where we start. Don't ever put double bubble or parentheses around anything until the very end on all the others. This is the only one where we start with it. Okay, so we're going to take whatever letter is the squared term and we'll put 1 in the front of each bubble. And then we're going to take the the coefficient from the first term and the coefficient of the last term and multiply them together. So in this case, 1 times 20, it equals 20. Now we're going to find all the factors. Remember, factors are numbers that multiply together to get the product. Well, the product in this case is 20. We need all the different pairs of numbers that can multiply together. To do this, I always start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make sure that I am not missing any pair at all. So that way, and there will be times where you will feel like it's not going to happen, it's going on too long, it's too hard. Keep at it. I've seen so many times where people stopped at 14 times whatever to get to the number and said, okay, I just give up. And sure enough, the very next one, 15 times 16, let's say, was your actual number. So don't give up on these. So how we do this, 1 times what is 20? Well, 1 times 20. 2 times what is 20? 3 does not go into it. 4 times what is 20? And the next one is 5, but I already did 5. So if I get that 2 numbers are the same, or I'm ready to write a number, but I've already written it, then it means I'm done, and I have all the pairs that I need to have. So let's get rid of this guy here. Okay. Now, once I've done that, then I need to look at, is it either this pair or this pair or this pair, that when I add them together in any combination of signs, I will get the sign and this number of the middle term. Well, it looks to me like it's going to be this, and it's going to have to be a +4 and a +5, and I highly recommend that you do this step. Figure out which pair it is, then write down with the sign for each one. Now we're going to do 2 steps next. Always do both of these steps, especially the second one. It will catch sign problems. So the first thing we do is add these two together. When I add +4 +5, I get +9, and that's what I need right here, and so that works. Now the last critical step, please always remember this, multiply now just your signs, not the numbers, just your signs. So a positive times a positive is a positive, and if that's what this number is, then this is the pair that we're going to use in this with this combination of signs, and in this case, we just plunk them in like that. Just boom, we're done. It's that easy. And the book, which I'd prefer you don't use, but the book suggests, and lots of times teachers do, what I call a multiple guess method. This method that I'm teaching you takes all the guess out of it, and there's never any guessing going on. And it's you can be really confident that you're getting what you need to, the right answer. So let's try another one. Minus 7b plus 10. So using your factoring rules sheet, look at it. Rule number 1. Is there any greatest common factors? Well, there is not. So rule number 2, is it a special factoring form? We still haven't learned that yet, so we're just going to say no. Trust that I know it. Rule number 3, is it a trinomial? Remember, trinomial means 3 terms. 1, 2, oops, come back here. 2, 3. So this has 3 terms. Yes, it's a trinomial, like tricycle, binomial like bicycle. 2 terms. So trinomial, rule A says again, does the squared term have a 1 coefficient? So yes, it does. So automatically double bubble. Then I take the 1 times the 10. And you notice how I'm doing it way over on the right. Think of it as the margin on the right as your scratch area where you do scratch work. Anytime you feel like you want to be doing little numbers somewhere around in the problem or to the left, do not do those there. Please do them over on the right. I need to see them, but they aren't actually part of the problem. And it keeps it out of the work area and keeps it nice and neat, and we can see everything. And that also leaves the center section here for me when I see your work, if I need to write stuff in there to help you. Okay, so this equals 10. Now all the factors of 10. Well, 1 times 10, 2 times 5, 3 doesn't go into it, 4 doesn't go into it, 5 does, but I've already written 5. So now I need a pair. Let's see, looks like it's going to be this, and it's going to have to be -2 and -5. Now, our 2 steps. First, I add these 2 together. -2 minus 5 equals -7, and that's what this is. So that works. Last critical step, multiply just the signs. So negative times a negative is a positive, and that's what this is. So we're good to go. So I put the B in the front of each, use these numbers with those signs, and I can just put them in either one, and I'm done, and it works. I can check it, skip one line, write check, and now I just multiply back together. B times B is B squared, B times -5 is -5B, -2 times B is negative, come on. What's going on? -2b, and -2 times -5 is +10. Now I have these 2 like terms to combine, so b squared minus 7b plus 10. That's the exact same thing I started with, and so I'm good. Let's do another example. Okay, rule number 1, any greatest common factors? Nope. Rule number 2, is it a special factoring form? In other words, a pattern. We'll get to those in a few minutes. Nope, it's not that. Rule number 3, is it a trinomial? Yes, it is. Does the squared term have a 1 coefficient? It does. So automatically, double bubble. Now in this case, I'm going to put a P in the front because that's the first term. But you see this Q is also squared. So I'm just going to put a Q in the back end. Everything else now is exactly like we did before. Remember when we're multiplying these 2 together, always do them positive. Do not do signs. We take care of the signs in a much easier way. So 1 times 6 equals 6. So 1 times 6, 2 times 3. Next one's 3. Already got it. So I need... Let's try this one. I'm going to show you something here. So in order to do this, it would have to be a +1 and a -6. Now my 2 steps, and this is going to catch a problem for us. When I add these 2 together, I get -5, which is exactly what I want. Last critical step, multiply the signs. So positive times a negative is a negative. Is that what this is? Well, it's not, which means I cannot use that pair. It doesn't work. Fortunately for me, I have another pair here I can use. If I do this one, it would have to be -2 and -3. Now let's try our two steps again. When I add these two together, I get -5. Again, exactly what I want, so I'm good there. Last critical step, multiply just your signs. So negative times a negative is a positive. And is that what we want? It absolutely is. So now this is the pair in that combination of signs that we need, and we just plunk it in there, and there we are. Good to go. Okay, I'm going to do another one. Okay, so we've got 6a to the third plus 12a squared minus 90a. Okay, remembering your factoring rules sheet, look at it. Rule number 1, any greatest common factors. Oh yeah, actually 6a can come out of each of these. So from this, it leaves me with a squared plus 2a minus, 6 goes in once, 15a. Now all I have to worry about is looking at the rest of this and go from there. I already did my greatest common factor. Make sure this guy keeps coming down all the time. Then rule number 2, is it a special factoring form? It is not. Rule number 3, is it a trinomial? It is. This has a 1 coefficient. So we're going to do double bubble. Oops, excuse me. This a is gone. I hope some of you caught that. Come on. Let's get rid of that. Because when I multiply 6a times -15, I get -90a. But if I multiply 6a times -15a, I would get -90a squared. And that doesn't work. So watch for that. Okay, so I'm going to put an a in the front of each of these. 1 times 15 equals 15. You don't actually have to do this. Just write this number here if you're okay with that. 1 times 15. 2 doesn't go into it. 3 times 5. 4 doesn't go into it. 5 does, but I've already got that. And I'm looking for 2, so I'm going to say -3 plus 5. Now let's do our two steps. When I add these two together, do I get +2? Well, I do. +2. Last critical step. Negative times a positive is a negative. I'm good to go. So this is -3 plus 5. But make sure you've brought this guy down, because if he's not there, you will never, ever get back to this. So when you factor a greatest common factor out first, and then you keep doing other things, make sure to keep bringing down the common factor that you brought out. And one last one here. T squared plus 3t minus 5. So rule number 1, greatest common factor. Nope. Rule number 2, not a special factoring form. It is a rule number 3a, trinomial. So let's do this with a 1 coefficient for the squared term. 1 times 5 is 5, and that's 1 in 5. But there is nothing in the world that I can do to add these two together to get a +3. So I'm done. This is called prime. But you see it so seldom. It can happen, but you see it so seldom that I hardly ever show it. You might have a homework problem, practice problem, but no, I never, ever put prime on tests or quizzes. I'm going to say that one more time. I never, ever put prime on tests or quizzes. All right.